Hello, everybody, people of New World. Happy Tuesday. It's me, Lemoni, and I'm here with Winston. And we got a new series. We're going to go Tuesday top 3. I'm just going to give you top 3 builds for a weapon, certain area, certain specification or something, okay? So Winston's super excited. We've been loving the Greatsword, and we're going to go into the top 3 builds for the Greatsword. And the thing is that this is going to cover both DPS, tanking, and give you a leveling build that you could use with the life staff or any other weapon. We're going to talk about Greatsword build, we're going to talk attributes and how to play it. If you want more content, want more deep dive related stuff, go hit up the Patreon. I'll have more on the Greatsword later on the channel, but hit up the Patreon for some in-depth guides, other content, and go down below. Keep doing that weird YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, tell everybody you know. Hit the description, 20% off at Madrina's if you use the coupon code Lemoni, all caps, and then hit the Discord and everything else. Let's get into this. Okay, first build's the leveling build. We're going to focus on being uninterruptible and then spamming onslaught attacks using our 2 abilities to get us into form and then just sitting there and spamming. We have healing potential, we have high damage output, and we can just stand there because, again, we're uninterruptible and we get a fortify off of that. What I will say is you could switch this point and this point depending on what you want to do. If you want a little bit of haste for movement speed outside of questing, go ahead. Otherwise, it's probably generally better to take this so you can just spam attacks onto random targets when your cooldowns are down so that you get an onslaught. This build will be best complemented with something like a great axe, a hammer, or for you life staff enjoyers, one of those. Just throw down your heels, sit there and whack at the enemies. Otherwise, use something to group them up. You can use pretty much whatever you want, but that's my suggestion. For the most part, what you're going to be doing is grouping up a giant cluster of enemies like you would if you had a hatchet, and then putting down your heels, and then just sitting there, go uninterruptible, and then go hack away at them. Again, if you aren't using a life staff, this would be a perfect opportunity for a big stun or a gravel or anything. The idea is that you first use Roaring Rupture so that they can't knock you around, and then go into Onslaught and just start spamming heavy attacks. You'll put bleeds on them, do tons of damage, and your cooldowns will reset fast if you go into the ultimate, if you have that unlocked yet. I'm using this to level on fresh servers, and I just wanted to show a little bit of an example in my OG sort of weapon guide spot. All right, build number 2 is PvP/PvP damage. This is one I would use in PvP, but there's also a change I would make to maybe be a little bit more of a assassin sort of build or schizo. So we're going to be looking at all the damage we can here. We don't really need to take this one. It's kind of a waste in my opinion at this point when you're in combat. But you're going to use this to close gaps, to remove roots and things, and to slow and root enemies. It's a ton of extra damage, gives you an empower. You can dodge around, get a little bit of empower. We have a lot of passive damage. You can use this as a rend. You can AoE 3-stack rend after you've onslaughted, and it is a huge amount of damage as well. So try and get behind people with that. We then go into the Defiance side. You can take Calamity Counter and you can use this sort of as an escape so that you can block a bunch of stuff, you get caught out. You can also use it as a huge DPS cooldown because the more we block, we then can knock people back, stagger them, but we can get this crit and bleed and crit. So crit chance goes up, meaning you're gonna do a higher damage and then it's gonna snapshot to a higher bleed. You spread that bleed to multiple people, there you go. And then we can stack that on top of this other bleed from Unflinching Blade if we're heavy attacking. And again, do not underestimate this damage. You can get like 2 of these heavy attacks out on Onslaught and just bleed entire groups comboed with Calamity Counter. And you can use this for the stand back if you have the perk on to get a little bit more mobility in PvP. Other thing you can do is actually change up your Defiance side. We would have to take Perfect Vigilance, we take this extra damage, and you could go into Steadfast Strike. Now, if you're doing that, you lose some of the bleed, you could opt to not take the second thing, but this does indeed stagger people. So you can become an assassin, use this as a sort of lunge, and then stagger them and pull them back into an onslaught combo that is just this one-shot potential if it's there. So keep that in mind. This is a very good ability that is not being used as much, but the potential is there, so I'll show that later. The secondary for this build is going to be dependent on what you choose to do. If you're more of a bruiser sitting in medium, even light armor bruiser, you want to be up in their faces, you could potentially swap in a great axe or a warhammer, anything like that. 2, if you're more of the I want to dive back lines and play a little bit more risky and have more damage output, go a hatchet. Hatchet is nuts in general with the Greatsword. You use it as a CC escape, a way to cheat death, a way to heal while you're running away, a way to lock down people so that you can then hit them in the back, and then you start to combo in, all right, I rooted somebody with my leap, and now I'm going into the Skyward Slash to just dunk on them like Darius and get a ton of damage in, or to set up a CC chain to try and kill them. Consider those options. It depends on how you would like to play. Ultimately, I think the hatchet's more fun, even if you do go in a more heavy bruiser route, so that you can just go right up to the healers and start killing people. In a build like this, your attributes are going to depend. You could be somebody that goes 100 con and then you blast into strength and you blast into dex. What I'm going to tell you is if you're looking to just be a schizo like the old sword and shield hatchet combo, that's more of your 100 to 150 con range. And then typically I would shoot for at least the amount of dex that's going to let you dodge at a lower cost, because it's going to one scale once you hit that threshold of a sort of soft cap of strength, and then give you more damage overall. So consider that. But if you're going to be more of like a medium bruiser, you could go the 150 to 200 con route is what I would suggest. Comboing this with a great axe, anything you wish. What you're looking for, if you're in one of those combos, is you're just going to max out to 300 strength and then go the rest dex. If you're a light armor, high damage person, I would then start to be like, all right, maybe go 100 to 150 con, 150 dex, rest strength. You'll lose some of that grit, but you do get grit on your heavy attacks when taking the bleed. So consider that. Okay, so with this build, we're looking to clear gaps. You hit people with your spin, they get slowed or they get rooted. It's also empower and more damage. You keep chasing them down because you'll also get some haste to keep it going. You can come up behind them then, hit them with the skyward slash, you rend. You could also open up this way. It does stagger, so you could theoretically roll, hit somebody in the back with this, do a giant chunk of damage, and bada bing, bada boom. You can use your calamity counter as a way to get stand back for mobility. You can use it as a life save, but you can also use it aggressively, like putting a dot on and getting just a huge hit off on people because it does have a high crit, and then it applies that bleed. You could also opt for the little lunge, stagger, and pullback if you want to go that method. But again, the world is your oyster. Do what you want to do. Okay, last build, and this was a ton of fun and something I want to dive deeper into in the future, so stay tuned. But this is the tanking build, the Greatsword. I went through, tanked a whole Genesis, completely fine, never lost threat, never died, mitigated a ton of damage. So what do we focus on? You are just going to heavy attack spam. It's very similar to the very early days of the channel when I did one on a great axe tanking build with a life staff and stuff. But this works way better because when you're in Defiance stance, you get guard point. So you have this big blue force field in front of you at all times. On top of it, you're reduced by 15% damage coming in, and then you get healing on everything. And then all of this generates threat, all of this heals. And if you're sitting there spamming heavy attacks, you have guard point pop up all the time. And then also, everything you're doing is gridded, so you don't have to worry. But then you're also stacking up this bleed between this and over here. So it's now taking a bleed on top of them that's going to help continue to gather threat. You have all this mitigation over here that just keeps you alive, and it is a very interesting combo. So damage over here, defensiveness here, and you go to town. What I would recommend for a secondary is if you want to play the sort of paladin build with the tanking version, go life staff, and you can do a couple things. 2, if you just want to do a great axe or a hammer and go the 300 strength, 200 con route, your choice. Armor class and everything, up to you as well, depending on your tanking abilities. This is a PvE build. So for tanking setup, if I was gonna do it because I'm bad at PvE sometimes, I'd go the 200 con heavy armor route. We'd then just ramp up whatever else you wanna do. If I am going with the life staff version, I will opt for going for the 150 focus healing output. Then the rest, I just go into strength. I don't have to worry about grit. I've got a block that's up constantly and my stam barely gets drained. And then on top of it, I can calamity counter to block out anything else and get a little bit of stam back. I can then scale my strength up to about the 50 to 100, obviously. And you're just doing generally more damage, but you do more damage with the Greatsword anyway because of all the passives. The focus piece is interesting because we could run a T2 Amber, which does increase your damage output by a ton. And again, T2 is better than T5 if you scale anything into the primary. But then we do get that healing piece on top. Now you would say, okay, what about my threat without a Carnelian? It is a little bit tougher if you don't have hated on your weapon. If you get hated on it, this is about the one instance where I'd like to have hated on top of things like refreshing move. You can cycle through threat a lot better. You have the damage output because of that amber on top of what you might get from a damage perk. And then you don't even have to bother with the Carnelian. You still get threat regardless with your abilities on that side. So it's pretty fun, very interesting, and just a breath of fresh air if you are a tank looking for something a little bit different. So in general, 200 con, 150 focus if you're going that route, and then strength. If you're going just complete strength route, personally, I would just go 300 strength or as close as you can, and then 200 or less con, and just sit there gritted out of your mind and doing tons of damage and healing off of it. Then I'd go a Carnelian for sure, or damage if you really wanted to, your choice. So I tanked a full expedition, had zero problems doing it. You'll see my guard point comes up and I just completely block stuff without even trying. I'm healing up through my damage, I'm healing up through leeching, I'm healing up through my life staff, and I just sit there and keep swinging. I cycle through my abilities to continue giving myself fortify, or to give myself additional healing, or to give myself a break to get a little bit of stamina back, or I use calamity counter to completely avoid a boss's ability or anything else that might be coming out. It's very easy to gather threat. It's very easy to mitigate damage. I tanked every boss, had no issues, and it was a very clean and easy to do thing. I would be curious to see what limits could be pushed to mutators and see what the potential of this build truly is. But I think there's a lot in store for Greatsword hybrid builds, at least on this channel, because you know I love hybrids. So be excited for that and more content on that. It's a breath of fresh air for the tanking role, that's for sure. Okay, so that's Top 3 Tuesday. Hope you like these best Greatsword builds for a couple different things, PvP, tanking, and damage. Stay tuned for next week, or put submissions down below on what you want to see next week for our next Top 3. I'd love it. As always, hit the things down below. Check out the description box. 20% off at Madrina's at checkout if you use coupon code Lemoni, all caps. We also have a separate thing in the description. If you want to submit some moments for a weekly highlights video for the New World community, I'm working on that. So there's a Google form below if you want to work on some of that. Also, Discord, Twitter, Twitch, if I choose to stream, all that down there, and the Patreon. And remember, at the Patreon, I'm going to have some more exclusive content on there. So I'm going to go into each of these builds, give a little bit more of a deep dive, and then talk about gearing and things like that for each build setup and my general insight. So head over there if you want some of that. But as always, keep doing the weird YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, tell your grandma, your grandpa, everybody you know. I'd appreciate it. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you to every single one of you beautiful people for being you. Peace.